Yo, Devin, Cameron, Yankee, Yomar. How's it going, dudes? All right. It's been a minute, man. Matt. I mean, yeah, man, it's been a little while for sure. Korea, Roger, how's it going? It's been a minute, man, but that's the cycle for you. You've got a lot to unpack in this video for sure. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. You guys are looking at the pre-split adjusted chart as if ape was never a thing or the reverse split was never a thing. The high is 72. Basically, guys, like if you take a look at this chart and the market cap chart, they look very similar. And I think they do a better. This is like a better representation of like AMC's true price. Even though again some might argue that dilution and stuff like that um, makes a chart look different. And I'm not talking about reverse splits or anything like that. Just regular dilution. The market cap chart is going to show you a better chart. But I wanted to pull this up here. I made an indicator and basically it just um, from the reverse split date, it's showing us the the actual price of AMC right now. Like that's not going to change. It's just the historical values right here are going to change slightly. Um, so again, we got the high being that 72, and then the previous low, which was 190. And the reason I want to pull this up, it just again it looks better. I mean, this chart just looks better. If I go back to the other chart, guys, this right here, again, this like massive short that took place here, this happened before the split, but there had already been some dilution, and then there was also the preferred shares that took the whole ape thing, man, that took place here. And I'm gonna kind of go over the cycle here. I'm gonna go over when the cycle died, and then where the new cycle is, where we're tracking the new cycle. Still don't have enough information to establish a new cycle. There is, guys, there was in the first cycle that we tracked, there was more consistency. There were more POIs playing out, and the reason for this was because we were in a stage in the entire market, a squeeze stage. So AMC went, from a distribution phase, created a massive spring, and this entire section here is just advancing, right? But then we have now a longer distribution period, and we're kind of waiting for that to end. So there's a lot of things that need to happen for this to be at play, right? Whenever you have a company that's not doing well or is headed towards bankruptcy, you get like a different kind of outlook here on a stock. For example, we have Nikola, Mullen, Zella, those guys that are consistently just diluting their investors over and over again. Now, I know that AMC has had a few instances where it has diluted and this reverse split, right? But the more important thing here to worry about is if there is another reverse split or like another dilution, and that is where you start to really question, right, these decisions that are being made. And then, yeah, you get a little bit skeptical because, like, what's going on, right? Like, there's one thing that we know in market cycles, and that is that the liquidity holder, or the highest liquidity holder, market maker, They can delay the algorithm for a while if they have the capital to do so, but eventually that volume will be released, and it does normally follow a sequence. So that's what we're here to do, man. We're here to crack the code, still try and narrow this down as much as we can to see where the next window is. And I'll show you guys here what the perspective is here, what I've been tracking for the last couple of months, and go from there, right? Now, there are some questions, obviously, about the cycle, man, and why it's dragged so long, and why we're trading back at these lower levels. Now, if you guys follow me on X, I talked about this fractal that we're tracking right now. I mean, there's like, guys, there's like 35 fractals that I have here that I'm tracking. And the good thing about all of them is that the levels have been great. I mean, the timing is one thing, but again, the algorithm can slow down and it can speed up. That's one thing that I know has been consistent here with all the fractals and patterns we're tracking. So the good thing about most of these is that they are following the sequence very well. I'm going to show you guys a few. The last one, or the most recent one, is this guy right here. Okay, so this is a cryptocurrency, and it's in fractal form. So when Plotzy actually scanned this, it wasn't really taking into account the one-to-one pattern sequence, because now I have the Plotzy set up to basically give me any match regardless of the interval, and that's pretty cool because then you're going to get more matches. So now if I find something on the 1 minute chart or the 1 hour chart versus the daily, it's still going to spit that match out here for us. And you can see here, based on this pattern, you do have the same characteristics, right? We have this like massive drop that took place. We have the split, which is pretty accurate with the levels, right? And then this entire stage right here, which is just a dead cat. It's a dead cat distribution spring, and then this becomes your accumulation, right? This is where you're accumulating pretty much anything from 11 to 2, guys, is accumulation. Like, this entire section here has been the longest accumulation period, if it is accumulation, in AMC's historical chart. I mean, there's not been a longer stage where it has traded sideways, so that's pretty significant. And yeah, you can see this is following this phase right here, this double bottom, if you will, pretty much to a T. So here is that in a little bit more detail. You can see here's the bottom. Does not climb below the 290 range, which is exactly what we have going on here. Now, this doesn't have to follow it to a T, guys. It is following it to a T right now, but there could be gaps that develop in the sequence. Like, again, the only thing we're tracking here are the levels and trying to narrow down the timing here on the POIs, right? So, for example, here we have what could be or turn out to be a parabolic arc, okay, which has not developed yet, is just speculation. But if it is a parabolic arc, and you start to look at the timing here a little bit, things are pretty symmetrical in that everything that's happening over here is pretty much the same length to what happened back here. This double bottom is like, it's pretty accurate. And if that was the case, you kind of have to draw a sort of like a post here, an end goal post, because in sequences, like, again, the algorithm can only extend things so much, and AMC's like behavior is there's a lot of volatility, right? Whenever you do experience that small window, that 13-day POI window, things typically happen very quickly, and then these guys are able to just suppress until they have to release again. So that's another thing, right? Is this going to be like a slower parabolic buildup here if the price holds, or are we going to get another spike, right? Another spike similar to what happened in May, and that's kind of the question here. So that's that. On the micro guys, and I'll talk about the cycle here in a second. I just want to talk about like technicals real quick and just price levels and some other things. There were a few scans. Somebody did a Plotzy scan, by the way. If you guys are on the Discord, I've opened up the chat. I just had to add some security measures because there were people sending out messages. One of the things I had said is if somebody's messaging you on there, guys, it's not me. I will never reach out to you directly. Again, I do everything through alerts, posts, anything like that, but I will never reach out to you directly. But you guys can access Plotzy. It's available there. It lets you scan patterns and gives you the reference patterns as well. And this is one that somebody found here on the Discord the other day. I was looking at it, Workhorse, and this is a nice scan here on the micro. It really does show us what could happen here in the short term. I do think AMC is going to cross 425 first. It's going to be the first level of resistance that we should cross. And then that becomes the first step, right? Because you zoom out a little bit, again, looking at things symmetrically here, and this is kind of like your first projector, right? You want to establish a parabolic arc, which is consistently creating higher lows. And however that ends up looking, guys, right, we won't know yet. But essentially what we're looking for is something like this. Like every single new low should be higher than the previous one. If I flip the chart here, you would see kind of the same thing. And there are fake outs on parabolic arcs, like many fake outs. But let's see, pull this up. You can see on this one, right, climbs up to 425, climbs back down, then keeps climbing up, does a second retest, and then it continues to climb up. And then once it crosses this macro resistance level at 10 or 11, potentially even higher again, we're not tracking, guys, these sequences. All that they're doing is they're showing us these levels, but algorithms sometimes speed things up all the way, right? If there is an endpoint here, I'll get to that in a second with these macro sequences we're tracking. All this volume here could be distributed or could be let out right here, right? And then you go all the way up to that last level, which is going to be about 18. Now, if you look at the original chart, this is where it gets interesting, because right now I'm showing you guys the adjusted chart, but it's not the best chart to look at. I think a lot of people think that when looking at this chart, like, when are we going to get all-time highs and stuff like that? But you got to look at the OG chart, man, which is this guy down here. Okay, because once you dilute, man, things start to change here a little bit. And then you start to kind of do the math here, and the math ain't mathin', if you know what I mean. That's like the chart here becomes a little bit misleading. So let's look at it from the perspective of this chart. I think that's what's going to make the most sense. If you look at the low, right? Okay, it was about a 3,000% return when AMC was trading at 190, and it went up to 77. So do the math again, right? All-time highs on AMC technically would still be in this range. It's think about it. Anybody that's coming in, say on AMC right now, and they're buying AMC at $3.50, if it were to have a similar squeeze to what happened in 2021, going into the end of the year, it would be the same thing. The all-time high would still be 72. It would not be, right, the 300 level that it's at because of the reverse split. So you do have to look at that, and this is why I think that looking at these prices right here, these look a little bit more conservative in the short term, right? But eventually you do turn around, right, and the price goes up to a higher range. Like it, essentially what we're doing here is just creating a massive parabolic arc. It's a sequence that takes time, but gets up there, right? And yeah, this is why I like looking at this chart, man. It's just better. Give me 1 second here. Gotta look at these. And I'll get to the questions here in a second, guys. Okay. So back to the OG AMC chart, right? Back to it. This parabolic arc here, and actually this setup right now is basically a projector. Okay, it's a projector pattern. I've already talked about the levels that I think AMC is going to go at, and I do see in the next few years AMC going up to the $40 range, which is going to be right here. Okay, there's going to be a lot of volume in that range. That's also the average that AMC traded at before it fell down. So if it's going to turn around for good, and starting to see all these cryptocurrencies that are coming up to that range, like XRP, Doge, those guys that went way before AMC back in 2020. So similar thing here is looking at everything, opportunity here with a stock that is shorted the way AMC is. If all fundamentals line up and you don't have any more, dilution or reverse splits, dilution can still happen, guys, but the reverse split is probably the worst of all of them, in my opinion. Whenever a stock does multiple reverse splits, it's not a good look. I mean, again, take a look at Nikola right now. It's just had multiple reverse splits already, and its all-time high is like 3,000 something now. It's currently trading at like 30 something cents, and it has earnings later. So, those are the kind of stocks that they look promising at first, but then they start doing all this stuff in the administration, and it just kind of kills the stock, the momentum. That's not something that you want to see. So back to it, guys. This is the projector. We've got a more leveled projector. I think that this is going to be that low here for the long term. I will show you guys something pretty interesting too. We have a pattern here that I pulled up. It was GME. Here's GME. Now, I don't want anybody to clip this and be like, hey, why is this guy calling for this price or anything? I'm not. This is just to show you guys what the current structure, right? This is GME before it had, pretty much squeezed for the second time in May, right? Because GME had a much higher return than AMC in May. And then you guys know how it works, right? For a while, 120 days, and this has been way longer than that, right? But GME had the highest return in January, and then 3 cycles later, we had AMC go. So AMC went after, but these cycles, in my opinion, I think are extended. They're much larger because we're tracking a much larger sequence. So think about it this way. We have essentially what is a pennant in the making if you're looking at the macro chart, because these are sequences, right? This is why things don't have to happen the same way that they did in the past with everything that's been going on, right? if you're tracking these sequences here, yes, the price can go back up to 70 if it wants to, but normally the way you see it is you see it first trigger these like halfway marks, and again, guys, the halfway mark here with a wick would be about 30. If it goes up to 45 and then back down to 30 and trades in that range, now you kind of have this pennant developing. And I'll show you guys a cryptocurrency right now that is basically doing this, right? So you guys know Ethereum, right? Ethereum Classic, all those guys that we tracked for a little while. Here's Ethereum. And it's just a version, right? It's a version of it. These are not the same, the same pattern whatsoever, but it's just kind of showing you guys how this works. You have the all-time high, right? And it kind of comes back down to a low, and then right here, you're pretty much making that pennant, and you still don't know what direction it's going to take, right? But it's still a lower. It's not, yeah, it's a lower high, right? So descending, you have to cross that level of resistance before you break all-time highs again. So yeah, man, there's a lot that needs to happen, but if this is truly that low and we start crossing these previous levels of resistance, I think this could turn out to be a pretty intense parabolic setup here in the next few months, right? Okay, so back to it, man. I do want to say some things about the stock here. Get all this stuff out the way. So you guys remember the ARPA premium chart, the sequence. I'm going to pull that back up here and talk about these next 3 months because they're going to be pretty crucial in this macro picture, right? So the reason I think the next 3 months are going to be crucial on AMC, you got to look at a few things here. So we're gonna take a look at SPY, which is the market. We're gonna take a look at AMC, and then kind of try and understand what's going on here. So we're trading at all-time highs on SPY. So what happened the last time that we were trading at all-time highs, right? All-time highs, you have a squeeze here. It keeps going for a while before it starts dumping. You have two on the way up, which right now the markets are doing. I mean, they're steady on the way up. They haven't curved back down. In my opinion, and this has been something we've been tracking for a little while, but I think the markets are in a kind of like a stopping point here. So this is not saying we're going to have a crash or anything. I don't believe that. But I do believe that the markets are at a stopping point. And usually when you're at a stopping point, where you're kind of just trading sideways, you start to curve a little bit, maybe heading towards a distribution phase, maybe similar to 2021 to 2022, right? That usually is where the opportunity comes in because we're not falling yet, right? We're still making that curve. And this right here becomes the opportunity for a lot of smaller cap stocks, especially the ones that have not exited accumulation. You have many stocks that are trading in reaccumulation, like Mara, Riot, the cryptocurrency stocks, and some of them are exiting, advancing, and they're ready to distribute. And some of those, in my opinion, would be like maybe Reddit, MicroStrategy. They might have a little bit more juice to go, but soon when the markets turn back down, I think those are the ones that are going to take a bigger hit. So the sector analysis here, what happens to all that liquidity? It usually is transferred over to these other guys because that's how the market makers do it, man. They use all that liquidity, bring it back over, and kind of rinse and repeat with other stocks, right? So that's one thing. That's one thing. The other thing, guys, is so this new cycle, right? Thing to understand here is that the AMC cycle basically reset right here. And that was pretty much the start. We didn't even have options come in for a little while. Remember, options are like a big driver here, apart from shorts, that kind of they manipulate the price a little bit, are able to control the price movement with how much leverage they have. Just one contract is basically equal to 100 shares. And when they become in the money on both sides, puts or calls, and they start to exercise these calls, they can really use these pretty much this like infinite loop almost. But it's not quite infinite because there is a stopping point. There are thresholds that you have to follow. And at some point, they do have to release that. Okay, and there's proof of that. I mean, we just experienced a 300% move in May. So that right there, guys, that was the first major price movement that we've had in a very long time. And this is why I'm saying, guys, the next POI that hits is going to give us more clarity on like what the cycle is tracking here. But there is still no firm movements here because this is the first one. And until we get that second one, we won't have as much information. Now, this is why I'm relying a lot on these fractals and these patterns to track price movements and kind of start crossing these levels out one by one. All right, we have the ARPA sequence that has been good to us for a very long time. It's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, I pulled this back up in 2022. I believe this ARPA sequence here came in sometime in October is when it happened, and I probably pulled it up about a month later. And I was just shocked, man. I was like, yo, what the heck is going on here? Like, why is this chart look like AMC? Like, what? Like, how is this even possible, right? I mean, we know that patterns and fractals typically repeat themselves on larger and smaller time frames. This right here is a day sequence on ARPA. It's on the minute chart. And the fact that it not only tracked the levels to a T, guys, but gave us every single POI accurately. We have 1 here, 2, 3, 4. 4 POIs where the pattern not only followed the levels, the timing, the structure. Most accurate AMC comparison reference chart that I've seen so far. And this was proof pretty much that the algorithm stopped tracking. Why? Because the ape preferred shares happened right here in August. Whenever that happened, everything stopped tracking. Massive gaps. The premium chart here is showing us no volatility. But what becomes significant about this tracking is this. Because for a very long time, okay, on ARPA's premium chart here, we did not see any price movement here. And this is, guys, this is about maybe a few hours. I say a very long time because of AMC's chart. But up to this point, the algorithm is at a stopping point, and then it comes back to life. And this is what I'm kind of referring to. The next 2 months should be interesting to track. This is just one thing to consider, and it's not to say that we're going to see any crazy volume, right, or anything like that, because relying on just one piece here would be kind of stupid. Everything else that we've been tracking is also relevant, guys. The sector analysis, all the other reference patterns that are calling for something like this is definitely relevant to track. This is just, again, one piece to this macro puzzle. Pretty cool stuff. Now, the other, I was able to pull up the actual ARPA chart, which was pretty cool too. And this right here, guys, is not the premium chart. It's the ARPA chart when it gave us the premium. Now, the premium chart, guys, is like if you're looking at options, right? When you're looking at options, the AMC option chart is going to look very different from from AMC's chart, because you have theta pretty much crushing the the price movement every time. What am I trying to say here? Time will crush the overall average of price, right? I mean, as time goes on, the slope is going to get lower and lower and lower. So that's why I think maybe that's why the premium chart looks very accurate to AMC, is because there's so much volatility. But with that, again, look, this right here is basically telling me, right, that whatever ends up happening here, okay, here's the pennant that I was referring to earlier, right? There's that second, this is like the second macro phase. It's lower, and it doesn't have to be this way. It could just keep going up, guys, but these sequences are typically very good at telling us when the next stage is coming up. Yeah, so the fact that we have like a massive volume spike here on the premium chart, and then also, again, you can see it probably a little bit better on this chart, is, yeah, pretty significant. So, little parabolic setup, and then it comes very close to that August high, which is 25, not considering the wick or the volatility on AMC. So, yeah, dude, that's just ARPA, man. There's other I pulled up one. What was it? This is another premium chart to track the levels a little bit, not the timing. This one is actually the most recent premium chart on ARPA as well. I pulled it up last week, and again, the $40 range here is what it's calling for. I'm not sure what's going to happen after that. If it does reach the $40 range by the end of the year or something like that, or earlier next year, whatever happens after that, guys, really depends on the algorithm and the threshold. That volume threshold that allows more volume is, you got to remember that with these algorithms, right, they have this like massive plan, bro. Okay, and if the algorithm is following to a T and then something goes wrong, usually that means that there's too much volume and these guys are not able to suppress that volume to prevent a squeeze or something. That's how squeezes happen, right? So when squeezes happen, man, the algorithm is wonky. It's just not working. And I mean, just go look at, if you have Thinkorswim, go look at 2021 and pull up GME, and you will see like the most random like choppiness intraday. Like, it does not look or track anything. I mean, these guys are trying to suppress so hard that it's almost impossible to see any kind of structure on the algorithm. Pretty crazy stuff, man. So with all that, man, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, you follow, like, the algorithm is accurate, but at some point you can't just rely on those levels, because if the algorithm does break, you're going to get a bigger push. It's just also responsible to, to consider these major price points of resistance and support, because a lot of the times also the algorithm does follow through, and you do get a breather, right? All right. Now, what do I think is going to happen with brother GME? Because that's another thing, guys. Now, before I pull that up, I want to talk about the parabolic arc on GME before it took place. Because what's happening right now, I think we can kind of see what's going on right here, right on this low. Whenever it breaks, and it looks very similar, guys. That's the crazy part, is you have this like almost descending wedge, right? And it looks very, very similar uh, in its own way, but descending wedge breaks down. Maybe at first it looks like a pennant or something, and oh, you're bullish, whatever. It breaks down. Here's your fake out. It's still following this curve, but here's your fake out, and then it pushes back up. Very similar to AMC. I mean, you had kind of that pennant setup. How many times have we had that pennant setup, man? We've had it over here too. And then it breaks down. This becomes like the like a massive, massive fake out or something. But the trajectory is technically, if it does go up to like 40 or something in the by 2026 or something, it would technically be pointing up. So not right now because we're trading at all-time lows, but this is just on the micro, guys. You find yourself in a fake out right here. Pennant. Here's your breakdown, fake out, and then it climbs back up. So the algorithm here, essentially what we're looking for is a faster sequence. So all you got to do is push it up like that. And then here, right, on the second POI, if it does break back down, now what the algorithm could do is slow things back down again. And then you just, again, you just track the levels, man. It's like pretty much the best thing to do is track the levels. But yeah, I mean, once we get this next, or if we get this next POI to hit, I think the tracking is going to be way easier. I mean, the OGs know, man. You guys were here when I started the channel in November. I mean, we tracked micro POIs and macro POIs, and they were very, very accurate. But the problem is that after the preferred shares came through, it was almost impossible to track it. And that is where kind of that reputation on the cycle was killed a little bit. And it was pretty unfortunate because a lot of other stocks, a lot of different cycles we were tracking were very accurate, right? It was just AMC that was not showing us that consistency. And this is why I've said it, pretty firmly too. This next push here on this new cycle, right, should give us more clarity on what the long term might look like for Amy, right? Okay, so we'll pull up GME now. No, this is not GME's price. This is just my indicator for AMC. Here we go. Look at that. That's your second squeeze on GME. See how it's lower? That's what I'm talking about. The pennant formation. Just real quick, guys, just so you know what I'm expecting on AMC, but we don't have like to the same degree. Here's AMC, and then here's like the high in 2021, and it goes lower in June, and then this one here is similar to the one in June, but for GME, it's a lot closer to the one in January. Like, it's very close. So I think that's why the sequence here is a little bit more, it's like slower almost on AMC, and AMC is still in accumulation. GME is one of the highest return, like has one of the highest returns for a stock since like 2020. Like, if I have an indicator that shows us that, I'll show you guys here what stocks are kind of ahead of the game. Right now, I think it's set to this year, so it might not show us, like, yeah. So HIMS right now is #1 for the year. I think it's one of the highest. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, here we go. So this is, yeah, this is what the year looks like so far on 200 stocks. HIMS is first. I mean, just massive, massive return on HIMS. Yeah, you know what's crazy about HIMS? I'm getting off track a little bit here, guys, but we were tracking this on the Discord, and look at this. It like it followed this thing to a T. We were tracking it down here. I was thinking there's a possibility it might come down to 20, 28. It triggered those. Or these expired or whatever, and then the price just pushed. Look at how the algorithm sped things up here. Now it's basically on those highs. One of the things I had said too, guys, is a lot of these squeeze plays that end up playing out. Okay, just an example here of like how the algorithm follows levels, right? Not so much these gaps or anything like that. The timing is close, but the levels are better, right? The problem with this is any like long-term puts or anything like that, say this thing does climb down or whatever, puts are so expensive, and you'll see it really with like stocks like Reddit and the way these guys fake things out. A lot of the longer term puts, the premiums are like through the roof. So yeah, this is just an interesting little setup on HIMS. But back to GME, because okay, so GME is in a interesting setup. There's a few things that can happen. Now I'm going to talk from the perspective of like technical analysis, and then also from the perspective of in-cycle analysis. There's certain rules that don't apply to all stocks, right? Specifically the ones like AMC and GME, because these guys have previously squeezed before, which throws all the fundamental rules of technical analysis out of the way. This is what I mean, guys, with when we're tracking these levels, it's just a responsible thing to do. It has nothing to do with like the maximum potential of like where a stock can go, right? So that's why I like to talk about both scenarios. I can tell you right now, the more conservative scenario on GME is that it goes back up to 60. That would be 100% push this year. And the reason I think that is because typically, the way these guys are able to collect so much money is by that initial quick squeeze push to this $60 range. I mean, it went a little bit higher. You see the high went up to 80. And then how quickly they were able to bring it down. I mean, just the amount of capital they collected here with premiums, and they did it twice, man, which is crazy. Premiums are so high in this like small window, and bringing it back to this $20 average here, where all volume is being collected right now. This is the volume profile. Since pretty much in all 2024 is going to be right in this range. So much accumulation taking place, but then this is what happens. Like, it's very slow. These guys are able to suppress this for so long. And, like, I'll show you guys some patterns here. So there's a few. This is one I pulled up here on Plotzy the other day. It pretty much has a fake out and then a continuation. The AMC and GME cycle are not necessarily the same. Whenever GME has its next POI, it's likely that AMC will, but one is expected to go up higher than the other, and this is where I think the tables are flipping. This is where I think now AMC is going to go, and then GME is going to take that kind of that breather, because 100% push is still high, but with AMC, we're expecting something much higher, probably 3 times or 4 times as much. There's some other patterns, right? Like this one, too, has it trading sideways and then going up in March, which is around that same POI range. But that is just on fundamentals. If you look at the macro chart here, 2 things can happen, right? Go on the weekly chart. And what you'll see, this is like pretty much like on an average of what this chart looks like, but you kind of have to pull up this, okay? You already kind of see that pennant forming, but if this gets rejected on 60, then this thing can experience another distribution phase for a while, like going into 2026. That's the only thing about the short term that I think a lot of people are kind of throwing off the wall. This is just from a fundamental perspective, guys, on technical analysis. If the rules follow, just technical analysis. If they don't, then you have a much different sort of outlook here on what could happen. This could be a projector too. It could be in the final stages before it starts to actually squeeze. And then you get a much different chart, like a much, much different chart. There's a few possibilities here on GME. One of the ones I was following was the AMC sequence in November of 2020. And this is why, again, I had that kind of double bottom setup for GME, because it already had really pushed quite a bit. It went from 10 to 80. It did a 80 to 80, literally. Went all the way up here. This is the average. Show me the wick, bro. There we go. 700%. AMC only went up 300%. So it climbs back up. They're able to kind of cover a little bit there on the premiums, and then or hedge for their positions. Already hit the first target at 33, came back down. So far, this fractal has been tracking very well on the levels. And then you have this final parabolic move, which is perfectly lined up for AMC's next POI. So let's get to that, because that's the one thing we haven't talked about, and it's the cycle. So everything here is speculation. Remember, guys, none of this is financial advice. It's just my perspective through the lens of the cycle from what we've known in the past and how it normally follows the sequence. Now, I think the cycle here is a lot larger. It's a lot bigger. We're tracking something on the macro. So, like, there are smaller moves that can happen in the 13-day window, but they would just be considered like micro POIs and micro moves for smaller hedging positions or like strike prices. So here I'll show you guys the current cycle, which is, again, speculation on where I think things are. For example, this last push here, that you almost see this kind of ladder attack on AMC right here. Okay, that right there happened inside the cycle. And you can see, if you bring this back down, it's very close to this range in the cycle. I mean, if you pull it up there, you can kind of see the similarities between the two, right? These are things that we tracked in previous cycles, back in like 2020 or back in 2022 on the micro. And then you get to these larger portion, or the green portion back again in March, which is when we're expecting the next POI to hit. And this is all taken from right here and right here, which is, you could see right here in August. This is the start of the new cycle. Why? Because this is where the options pretty much, you can see I'm not taking this into account at all, because this was the final push, and this is where we got a little confused in the cycle. Had already had the speculation that because we were about to get another reset in the cycle, that it would restart, right? And that's August 24th. When we had the reverse split, and the contracts back then became non-standard, which means there's less liquidity, which means that anything that's out of the money is less likely to sell or you can't exercise. And therefore, everybody starts buying the new options. So cycle resets, right? This is the 62-day cycle. This is the first POI, right? Based on this tracking that is accurate in the sequence because there's a lot of volume right here, right? So in the cycle, you have the reverse split, the 24th, boom, boom. It goes from 22 to 6. That is considered a pretty hefty push to the downside. I mean, that's equivalent to 24th right there. That's about 200%. So way above the threshold. The second one is 300. Right? So the threshold goes up. It's not the same threshold that it was before. We were sitting at 70% and now it's sitting at 100. And this is why I think that, whatever ends up happening here, for this to suffice, we would need to see at least 100% push to be considered like a macro POI, right? But again, this is still speculation because we only have 2 data points, and these are 2 data points that, even though technically it's accurate, right? The rest we know these are just neutral POIs. There's nothing happening. But until we get that third one, we get more consistency. Then the probability of tracking this in the future, if the price starts to actually push to the upside, that is where we're going to have a better tracking record, right, that we've seen before. Again, this entire section, guys, I'll say it again, but ever since the split, from the split to the 8 preferred shares, everything that took place right here was basically untraceable. Everything that happened in here became a very bad tracking record because there just was no consistency. We had pretty much half of AMC trading somewhere else, and it just made everything is just wonky. It was not great. But now that everything's back together, again, it makes things a lot easier to track, right? So, or it will make things a lot easier to track if this does end up playing out and panning out, right? Something else I wanted to show you guys here is the current tracking. So we know that the red portion of the cycle is normally what dictates at least the direction that is going to take place before a POI. Some of them are pretty good at it. Some of them are, for example, this one follows a structure well and then it trades sideways, gets your little projector and then pushes up. This one right here, so far, if you flip it, okay, and guys, the cycle has a day or two sometimes where it is tracking ahead or stuff like that, but you can see right here that right there is basically the tracking. So these are the micro POIs I'm talking about. So we have, this is a push, it goes up, it trades sideways, slightly slanted, and then right here it calls for downside in a short. Now this is pretty cool because now in the next few days you can kind of see, based on this tracking, which seems to be accurate, it does call for that parabolic push and then it does break above 425. But at that point I wouldn't be tracking it anymore because once it does that, now we're getting into POI territory and anything can happen there, right? It goes up to 425, climbs back down, and then right here is where we have the next POI pretty much, right? And we have earnings coming up too, man. Earnings are coming up. Okay. All right, let me see some of the questions here. Luke fractal analysis. Produce no results following fractal guides. I like the theory, but goalposts constantly change. Theories never. And look, man, like the purpose of fractal or cycle analysis is not just to look at fractals too. One of the things that I do, like as a rule, is that I split things up into what makes this, and it's not about predicting when things are going to happen. It's about narrowing it down as much as you can, right? So we look at the fractals is a big factor in this whole macro picture. Also tracking patterns that are one-to-one, and then also looking at those as potential reference patterns with everything else that you know about it. I'll give you an example, but Reddit is one of the stocks that we've been tracking here for a little bit, and I'll show you the sequence on Reddit based on fractal tracking with other things involved, right? So we have the Reddit chart here, and you can go on the Discord. We've been tracking this for a little while now. I've been tracking the upstart sequence on Reddit, right? And if you look at the macro chart here on upstart, there are flaws in this pattern, right? But overall, everything up to the levels is the most important thing. The timing is sometimes what is the hardest. And I'll say that knowing what I know about AMC, how hard the timing is sometimes, this is why I've focused on and kind of changed the outlook here a little bit on the timing more than, trusting the levels, because I think overall the levels are going to be more accurate. But this is just one piece to the puzzle here on this tracking, right? There's a lot of opportunity in this chart. As you can see, I've said multiple times, there's some charts that are exiting, advancing, and I think Reddit is one of those. The craziest thing about this chart is not even the fractal. It's the consistency with like fundamentals in this stock. Like if you go to Upstart, right? And these are the other things that you kind of have to check off the list a little bit. But not only is this pattern here very close to being one-to-one in terms of timing, but we have a few things to check. The price point here is 400. The price point here is 200. But that's not what matters. If you look at market cap, this is the scary part. Market cap, bro. The market cap is what caught my attention here, because the high on Upstart was 32 billion. The high right here on Reddit is 41, right? So the price point here between the two, very close market caps. And you can see from the low, it goes from 6 billion. This one goes from 3 billion. It ends up going there, and then it starts distributing and climbing back down. So market caps are very similar, right? The timing is very similar. You start to look at even some of the other indicators, right? We're on the daily chart. I'm on the daily chart here. Eventually, it makes its way down and starts going into that oversold area. But these are the way that I look at it, at least, is like when these are new stocks, right? Upstart was a new stock in 2020. This is a new stock in 2024. So all these things, man, you start to kind of look at it like, okay, what are these being used for? Is this like just a liquidity transfer? Like what's happening here? Because a lot of other stocks are not tracking. A lot of other stocks, man, are just, they're tracking different sequences, different phases. And, stocks like this one, I believe, are about to be dumped and are about to be used for liquidity somewhere else. So yeah, it's more than the fractals. And I get it, man. I get frustrated sometimes too. I'm not gonna lie, when some of the fractals are like, they look very promising, and then boom, they don't end up tracking. It's perfectly normal for sure to feel that way. But I also try and push out this whole thing where it really comes down to everything else involved with the cycle analysis has a lot to do with other things as well, right? We got the fractals. Tracking sector rotation is very important too. Option expiration dates, another thing. Just looking at the overall market, SPY is very important. Looking at crypto specifically is very important too. And then, apart from that, we use a few other things to kind of help us get a good estimate, right, on when potentially we might experience some volatility. Another thing, guys, is the indicators. I mean, the indicators are great, and I'm talking about specifically cycle indicators, right? So one of the indicators we use is spots. Really good at giving us historical data showing when, the last time we crossed a major level on the smoothing filter, and then also changes. Changes is going to be, for me, probably my favorite indicator. Is just taking the ROC, the rate of change, and that way you don't really have to look at the AMC true price, because this is going to show us that on a consistent basis. I have this set to 13 when I'm tracking stocks that have high volatility, and this is a good way to see when you experience volatility. Tracking resistance and support levels on this indicator is very, very accurate, and it just shows you historically where a stock typically goes and before it starts to, if it's going to be like a pump and dump or something, or it crosses a resistance level, is it going to distribute or is it going to keep going? That's typically what this indicator is showing us here. Again, we have not seen a higher, in a 13-day window, we have not seen a push on AMC that has been higher than 100 since May. And the last one even before that was March of 2022. So very dry right now. Look at this, guys. It is just crazy. I mean, it's just trading within the 20% range. Well, I've said that this right here has been the longest period that it has traded pretty much in accumulation sideways. There's way more volatility even in 2020. Like, look at 2020, so much volatility. So, yeah, man, the lines are narrowing down. I like to use 50. 50, I think, is the better length to track for sure. Hey, man, I appreciate you guys clarifying some things on there. I respect your discussion, with this, guys. Remember, like, it's all about that. It's all about clarifying, clarifying some things, and I'm here to answer questions, man. I know I know that there's a lot of questions in the community, and I like to be pretty. I don't like to be brief with it or anything. I want to go into into depth with this kind of thing, because it can be it's one of those things that's kind of, it takes time, man. It takes time to just kind of see it from that perspective, and I'm all about teaching, man. It's what I love, bro. Come in also, guys, on the Discord if you do want to. Again, it's free. You guys can shoot me a message. I'm trying to be a little bit more private about the Discord, so if you do want to be in the Discord, I've opened up a chat again. You guys can use Plotzy. If you want some other things like the indicators, or you want to learn a little bit more about trading, that's going to be on tradepicks.com, also in the link below. But yeah, man, I'm here for that. There's also a lot of videos. I have all the lives posted, man, where I go over this kind of analysis. And it really is really more of a longer term with a lot of these plays, guys. These like macro POIs and stuff. It is more of a longer term approach. But there are especially on the trade Discord too. There are shorter term POIs that I track. For example, right, like we tracked Reddit. I talked about this earlier. And I talk about all these stocks, man, on the lives. They don't have to be trades that I'm taking. They are just stocks that I talk about that could experience, volatility and stuff, right? We talked about HIMS, which is one of the ones that also followed through, and it's currently trading at the $70 range. And then I'm expecting probably in the next month or so for it to climb back down. So a lot of these stocks, guys, that we track here and, for these moves are stocks that, we apply the same logic, the same cycle approach to try and figure out where the price is going to go and where essentially it's going to take that rest breather and come back down. Okay, so here, again, here's a picture really of the stock market right now. Yes, there are some stocks here that are missing, guys. I don't have there's 200 stocks here that I picked. And it just gives you an interesting perspective here of what, what these stocks are doing and like which ones here are being pumped to the max right now. And it's a good way to also see, what stocks are oversold, what stocks are not oversold, and are maybe overbought. BlackBerry, right, has been killing it over the last few weeks now. It's been killing it, man. And it's one of the things you have to track on the cycle, right? Because BlackBerry is part of this, of this like meme sector of sector rotations. We have sectors vortex right here. BlackBerry has been trading sideways for a very, very long time. Here's the sector vortex overlaid on everything. You can see in red we have the memes. In blue we have crypto. In yellow we have tech, high volatility tech stocks. And then speculative plays. Typically, I bulk in a lot of different a lot of different stocks that I think kind of trade in similar cycles that are also on there. And this shows you the curve that I'm talking about of distribution in terms of like how liquidity is being transferred, right? We have yellow go, right? So yellow, blue, green, red, right? That's one cycle right there. And now that's going to change throughout the entire, that's going to change, right? Depending on the more you understand about what's this like macro cycle is, but it's a good way to kind of see which ones are kind of next to go. And you can see at the bottom right now, we have kind of crypto. We have everything that tends to go very closely together, like crypto, cannabis stocks, and then memes tend to go around the same time. Like they're very closely correlated in terms of time. But the other plays, right, like we have DJT, go to RLX, and HIMS, and speculative plays, they tend to go together. And those guys right now are kind of pumping. They're leading the game right now. So, yeah, again, something else that I track when doing all this. I did want to show you guys what all this looks like here since 2020. So let's go back to 2020. You guys are going to be like, whoa, what is going on here? But this is the crazy part, man. If you go back to 2020, like AMC is down and this is think about it from somebody who's like invested since 2020, right? That's pretty much what we're looking at here. We're not talking about like the market cap chart or anything like that. We're talking about just what a stock has done from point A to point B. AMC, negative 91. Tilray, negative 94. Again, Nikola they've consistently diluted this stock by adding reverse splits. Not a good look for this one, potentially, and it already has the whole bankruptcy thing happening. So that one is, in my opinion, going to go to the pennies. But just kind of looking at this is pretty insane, because you go up and look at where GME is. GME is number one on the first. This is just one. It has 20 stocks. GME is number one right now. I think there's one other stock that beats it, and I'm pretty sure it's NVIDIA. Let me see. Pretty sure it's NVIDIA. Let's see. Yep, NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is the highest since 2020. NVIDIA is number one right now. There at some point, I think Sava was like number one, but then the whole thing came out with the Alzheimer drug not being effective or whatever, and it tanked like crazy. But yeah, this shows you the last 5 years. MSTR is another one that's been just crazy. Tesla, another one. But isn't that crazy, guys, to see this? GME is top 3, and then AMC's down here because of kind of the administration and everything they've been doing with diluting. But it doesn't invalidate movements of like what the stock can do in the future, because again, when you look at a stock that has dilution, you're going to get a wonky chart, and you're going to get charts that are much lower in return because it's not really reflecting the true price. So let's put them all here. Some of them are not going to show up because they're newer, but it'll show most of them. NVIDIA is number one, MSTR, then GME, then Mara, Futu, Riot, and now we got HIMS right here. HIMS has been killing it. And then at the very, very bottom, we have Nikola, CGC, Workhorse, Virgin Galactic, LAZR, Tilray, Beyond Meat, Sundial, ChargePoint, AMC, GoTo, and these are the ones where you can kind of look like historically speaking, look at what happened here in 2020. So this is Sundial. It goes down to negative 94, and then it squeezes, right? So these are the things that I'm kind of referring to when a lot of these stocks that dump this way and come down to like extreme lows, there are those stocks that have the potential to climb back up and keep going. And that's, good way to kind of see it. Now, the ones that don't do that are typically the ones that remain on a curve. Like, they never even have, like, a breather. Like, they're just consistently low dilution. Nikola. And, some of these other ones, too, questionable. But AMC is not there, man. It's about 10% away. Never hit... Like, it hit 90-something at one point. Right here, it hit 93. So, actually, it hit pretty much the same level that Sundial did. Close to it. 93, Sundial hit 95, and then it started to climb up. Now it's at 91. Crazy, man. Crazy. All right, guys. Just wanted to come in for an hour just to kind of, get back at it again, man. I know that I go live. I go live. I go live every day on the Discord, but when I'm covering AMC, guys, like I do it when it's appropriate, when the time, whenever I'm expecting something to happen or anything like that is typically when I go live to kind of cover and see that, because you don't want to cover a stock, knowing that it has no consistent uh, trajectory, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. Right here, I see that potential with everything else that I talked about. I mean, if you guys are just coming in, rewind the video. I go over pretty much everything, and yeah, man, like I will keep tracking this in the short term. Keep updating you guys. If you want more updates on this too, I go on Twitter or X, and I post on there as well. And if you want more daily updates as well, you can go ahead and get on in on the Discord. But that will be it, man, for today. Glad for those that came in. If you have any questions, again, shoot me a message. Or if you want to be a part of the Discord and try out Plotzy too, just send me a message and I'll let you guys in there. And that'll be it, man. You guys take care. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.